maybe she chose to ignore any reality that didn't fit her narrative. The breaking point came when she hand-delivered what she called an official HOA violation notice to my front door. This masterpiece was written in purple ink on personal stationery, complete with a homemade star stamp that looked like kindergarten art class work.
Happy kids are successful kids. When you choose a tuition-free K-12 PAL
Star stamp that looked like kindergarten art class work. The document was a work of community art demanding I cease all unauthorized living and activities in HOA influence zone within 24 hours, as if she'd invented her own legal system, where proximity to an HOA somehow granted her jurisdiction over public land. What made it even more ridiculous was that she'd clearly spent hours crafting this fake official notice, complete with numbered violations and references to HOA bylaws that had no legal authority over my project. The document demanded I cease all unauthorized living and activities in HOA influence zone within 24 hours. As I stood reading this ridiculous paper, I couldn't help but laugh. But then something clicked. Why was Karen so desperate about land that didn't belong to her? HOA. What was she doing? Her reaction seemed to point out the way this playground project, and her panic felt genuine, not just performative Karen drama. That night, reviewing all my interactions with Karen, I started noticing patterns that didn't make sense. She knew too much about the lot's daily activities, seemed genuinely terrified of losing control over the space, and kept making references to having invested years of work into this area. Most telling was how she'd slip up and refer to it as my land, or quickly correcting herself to say HOA adjacent property. Something was definitely going on. Something bigger than just a control-freak neighbor having a meltdown about a playground. As I looked at that ridiculous violation notice, I realized Karen's desperation wasn't about HOA rules. She was protecting something much darker. What I was about to discover buried in that lot would expose a criminal empire that made her fake authority look like child's play. Comment panic mode if you think Karen was already hiding something big. Karen's harassment campaign went nuclear the next week, and I mean she pulled out every dirty trick in the Karen playbook and invented some new ones. She started each morning creating what she called safety alerts on neighborhood apps, posting dramatic warnings about unauthorized construction endangering our children, taking photos of my safe scene-approved playground equipment that she somehow made look sinister through creative camera angles. Her daily posts read like emergency broadcasts from the war zone, claiming I was operating some dangerous industrial facility instead of installing swings and slides. She managed to convince exactly 0 people, but that didn't stop her from posting updates every few hours with increasingly unhinged commentary about property values and community safety. The woman actually hired what she called a legal consultant, who turned out to be her friend who sells insurance for a living, to send me threatening emails about lawsuits and property damage claims. These messages were absolutely hilarious, full of made-up legal terms and threats that wouldn't scare a first-year law student, but they showed just how far Karen was willing to go. Her friend Bob, who normally spent his days selling auto insurance, suddenly became her legal expert, sending me emails with subject lines like "Final warning, cease unauthorized activities," and threatening lawsuits for property value diminishment and quality of life violations, terms that sounded official but were completely meaningless in actual legal context. Bob clearly had no idea what he was talking about, but he was getting paid to play lawyer, so he threw around legal-sounding phrases like confetti at a parade, hoping something would stick and scare me into backing down. She printed a 20-page document she called HOA Rules that she stuffed into my mailbox daily, despite the fact that I didn't live in her HOA and her rules had about as much legal authority as a grocery list. My personal favorite was her decision to patrol the area with a megaphone standing on a lawn chair to achieve maximum dramatic effect while announcing to anyone within hearing distance that I was a community destroyer. The sight of Karen perched on her lawn chair with a megaphone dressed in her power suit like some kind of suburban dictator was so absurd that neighbors started coming out just to watch the show. She'd make these dramatic announcements about protecting our community from unauthorized development, while gesturing wildly at my perfectly legal playground equipment as if I were building a nuclear reactor instead of installing swings for children. The whole performance was so over the top that even her few supporters started looking embarrassed to be associated with her increasingly unhinged behavior. The real turning point came when I was digging the foundation for my swing set, and my shovel hit something hard about 2 feet down. What I pulled out changed everything I thought I knew about motivations. It was a metal cash box, and when I pried it open, I found $3,000 in cash, along with handwritten customer lists that made my jaw drop. The paper showed monthly payments from local construction companies. Johnson Construction, $300 per month. ABC Roofing, $250 per month, and about 15 other businesses paying similar amounts. At the bottom was a laminated sign fragment reading, "Overnight parking, $25 per night." And suddenly everything started making sense. That's when Walter Thompson, a 75-year-old retired carpenter who lived nearby, wandered over to see what I'd found. Walter had been quietly supportive of my playground project, occasionally bringing me water, offering construction advice. But what he told me next blew my mind completely. "Oh boy, son," he said, scratching his gray beard as he looked at the cash box. "That piece of land used to be bustling every night. Karen charged trucks and construction vehicles for overnight parking. Sometimes 15 to 20 vehicles paying $25 each. I estimated she was raking in $3,000 to $4,000 every month in cash only." Walter explained he had always assumed it was city approved, some kind of legitimate parking management service, but thinking back, the whole operation seemed pretty sketchy. The pieces of Karen's puzzle were finally coming together. The picture was shocking. This wasn't about HOA pride or community standards or property values. This was about money, serious money. Karen had been running an illegal commercial parking operation on public land for years, earning what Walter estimated would be over $2,000 to $3,000 monthly. No wonder she was panicking about my playground project. I wasn't just building swings and slides, I was destroying her secret cash cow. The woman who had been screaming about unauthorized activities and community disruption was herself operating the biggest unauthorized business in the neighborhood, making a fortune doing it.
Never sue the other driver after a car accident. There's a better way to make a track without having to go to court or pay expensive upfront legal